9:01. We're here to have further discussion on the railroad property purchase. And I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Zimmerman to start with.
Okay.
Do you have any comments or thoughts on that? And then we'll see what the rest of our staff has to say.
Okay. I'll turn it over to Dan. We talked to the EPA last week. We had a meeting with the EPA and Mr. Helke from the DEQ, and they're basically stating that we cannot put a jail on the property unless we change the covenant, which would require more remediation and further work on trying to get them to change the covenant.
So I'll jump in. So we did have that meeting, and we asked them to analyze the purchase and sale agreement and the original environmental covenant, and really help us make a decision. And while they were not confronted with a formal request and made a formal decision, they corroborated that their original intent of the environmental covenant was to not have residential long-term uses on that old railroad yard. Because of the level of potential contaminations that are there and the level of upkeep. So that's what we were looking for, was just the acknowledgement of the determination that living there is different than working there. And having commercial and industrial uses there was always intended to be the case. And it's in the agreements and in that environmental covenant. Residential uses was deemed to be not appropriate for that particular piece of property. We want to be clear about that, because we have a whole valley full of properties that we all live on and we all use, and I want to be clear that this property is not unusable, but it certainly doesn't seem to be the best fit for residential uses. And of course this jailhouse and falls into that same occupancy that boarding house and daycares and residential uses all falls into that industrial institutional type schools, those different types of things where you're there. So like you said, if we really, really wanted it, we could go look at petitioning the state and EPA to amend the environmental covenants to allow us to do that. With that would come significant extra caps and protections and the expenses that goes along with that, that would be required in order to make those changes. They would have to see more protections that people were protected. And so that's where the meeting was left. Again, we didn't ask them for a formal answer until we were actually confronted with the need for it. But that's the answer we wanted to hear, was what was their consensus.
Did they mention why they haven't said anything to the county sooner?
They were never contacted.
It seems like a key piece of information. Okay. Well, Sheriff, any thoughts?
We have, the community has,
If you want.
the community has an issue in the sense that crime is not reducing. The amount of incarceration here is increasing every year. As you know, our capacity at the jail is over the 48 capacity every single day. And there will be a point, if this continues, which I'm guessing it will because it's happening nationally, if this continues, we're going to have to start making some really tough decisions, and those decisions are, where are we going to take the inmates? And then the worst part about that is that at the end of the day, we have to pay for that. So if we have to start housing inmates at different locations, that's going to be quite a heavy dime for the county. I don't know what the numbers are. I know that Kootenai County has to do it. Several other jails have to do it. But at the same time, I don't feel that building a new facility is going to be the answer to our problems. Because as it is now, we can't hire enough people at our own jail. So we have these vacancies that remain open because we can't hire anybody. We've had 3 vacancies now for maybe 5 months, and we've had 2 people show any interest in it. So I think even if we, in the perfect world, we buy the property, we build a new public safety building, I don't know how we would staff it. You can go work in Kootenai County and make a pretty decent chunk of change in a new facility, and they have all these perks that we just can't offer here. So I don't know how we would make it work, honestly. We wouldn't have enough people to do that. If we raised the pay, would that help? It might. It's just a tough job that not a lot of people want to work. And so I worry about having this heavy burden of, okay, now we have this land, now we're going to build a facility, just trying to make it work. Are we going to have to do it at some point? At some point, we will have to either add on to our facility, or we will have to look at building one. It's not going to be an easy solution.
How many beds are state prisoners that we rent? We're renting beds outright.
Typically we do, and I couldn't tell you the cost of that. Part of the problem right now is that we're not actually renting beds at this point because our jail's too full. So the state inmates that we do have, they're just waiting to be sentenced. We're not really housing them for money. And the other thing that I kind of worry about, so the jail, we have to stop looking at the jail like it's going to be a moneymaker.
Exactly.
And I think that people are looking at it from that perspective, but it's, in a perfect world, that'd be great, but it's not going to be the moneymaker that we hoped for it to be.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to establish. Several people have asked me about, well, couldn't we just kick out the state prisoners we're renting to? But the reality is we're not using beds for that right now.
Not anymore.
Thank you.
Furthermore, we looked at this property as property that we could probably flip and probably make money on. But the problem is now is, we would have to look at a certain light industrial only. And it's, and what we heard from the EPA, that kind of poses a problem. So, and then we've talked about it with sewer, and it doesn't have a main sewer line in yet. And so that would be an expense. So really, and even with the property that, we offered $700,000, we're supposed to have an appraisal done. Idaho state law says that we have to have an appraisal done. And that's my worry right now, if it would even be able to be appraised. Assessor's appraiser is an ad valorem appraiser, which is a tax appraisal. It's not a Idaho state appraiser. So that's another issue that we have to look at. And we didn't do that yet until we heard from the EPA to make sure if we could, if this would be viable to actually make money on it.
So do you think it would be helpful as a related issue to this to get a group together and start discussing the long-range solution for your...
I do. I was just talking about that this weekend. Yeah, because I can't solve it. You can't solve it. It's going to take the community to come together and figure out some solutions, and that's actually going to work for them as well. This one keeps me awake at night because I don't know how to fix the issue.
It's a big problem.
And I definitely don't want to get to the point where we're having to house inmates elsewhere, just alone, because that's so expensive. So we're definitely in a no-win situation. And as much as we need a new jail, and as much as I'd love to have a new jail, I honestly just don't know how. Just speaking honestly, I don't know how we would make it work, considering we can't even hire people for our current jail. And if we raise the wages, would that work? I don't know. But at the same time, how are we going to do that when the county's in a financial crisis as it is. So,
So
I
it's a
think-
big problem.
yeah, I think getting people together and starting to figure out some solutions is going to be the right way to go.
I would add on to that. I think that's something we could keep. I was putting those right people together through the LEPC, the Local Emergency Planning Committee. I think that'd be a decent place to start with. That group is, of course, all the local folks and local stakeholders in the emergency planning arena, and so that would be a good place to start with some stakeholders and folks that might be able to help guide that decision. From there, of course, you put together the task of assessing that building from top to bottom, from all utilities and structurally, to figure out what are the actual options for remodeling and adding on. I know we've talked a lot about opinions over the years, but I think no formal studies have been done on what is the actual state of plumbing, electrical, and structural stability of that building. I think you really have to have that information before you can make any decisions on, is it worth spending any money on it, or is it worth spending some money, or is it worth spending a lot of money? From there, then you can make a decision of, do we go find a more appropriate piece of property with maybe a smaller facility but larger than this one, or you start looking at those avenues that way. Certainly need to do all the due diligence and figure out the long-term construction, because we're talking about a $10+ million construction project. Even at the previous one was $22 million. So even if you cut that in half, that's still a huge project to take on. So I think that's where we could start.
And maybe we could put our heads together and figure out if there's grant money or something that we could use to get a study of that building, to get a formal study, so we can move from opinion to like, yeah, it's actually going to cost 15, or no, it's only 8.
That's a good idea.
Something to move it forward, because obviously the problem's just going to get worse and worse. So maybe some kind of action there. Okay. At this time, I will ask if there are public comments on the issue. John, anything you want to say today?
Yeah. No, I'll hold off. Thank you.
Okay. Anything, Matt? No. Okay. Well, Mr. Zimmerman, given that the EPA says we can't build on it, and we still haven't done a formal appraisal on it, and hearing what the sheriffs had to say.
Well, and also, I'd like to further add is, right now, the county, what we were gonna do with the $2.1 million from Maverick is actually purchase this piece of property. But we've had to use $1.7 million of the Maverick property to put into our county budget in order to get through this year. And we do have LATCF funds, but looking at it right now with our budget, we're gonna still be short $1.7 million next year, and maybe more. And, because we've already used LATCF funds to purchase some of our equipment. And so without purchasing any equipment or anything like that next year, it would be 1.7 short. So that's what I'm worried about, that we may need these LATCF funds to further help our county out at that time. I know we've had to purchase a long haul truck and a backhoe, which we did that for the solid waste, because they're, we're taking 3 loads to the dump, and they're using a 1,000,000-mile truck right now. So we're trying to get necessities, and so I think, I really don't think that, this is viable to go towards purchasing this property. And, we could make money off of it, but at this time, we can't take that chance with the money because we need it.
You've been in contact with the sellers on behalf of the county. What's the next step if we want to?
Well, I'm going to have to run that by Ben. They did give us an extra until tomorrow to do the to finish up talking to the
Extension.
EPA, the extension. And so, I think we still have that extension where we can pull out, but I don't know if we're going to be able to get.
We don't have anything on the agenda for tomorrow, though.
No, but that's today. That's why we did it today.
Right.
So we can
So what do you think? Do you want to entertain a motion? Do you want to do a motion?
I'll motion that we withdraw from the offer from the property because due to the increased costs that would be involved with going towards trying to remediate it and trying to go through and get the new
With these
EPA agreement.
new information from the EPA.
We'd have to go through a process, and I think it would be costly.
I'll second that. Any further discussion?
No.
All right. All in favor? Aye. All right, so we're going to back out of that based on what the EPA has had to say. Okay. Well, Sheriff, I'd be willing to get together and discuss how we might look at next steps because we can't just leave it hanging.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. At least get something started. Because I know there's a solution. I'm just not sure that that was the right solution right now.
Right now, yeah. Okay. All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.